History of Gothic Lolita Substyle, hosted by, you can introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Julia, also known as Vudu Juju on Instagram, and my pronouns are she, her, and my style I would describe as Gothic Lolita, but with a little bit of a trad goth edge to it.
And my name is Chelsea. I go by Rose Nocturnalia on social media and Instagram. My pronouns are she, her, and I would describe myself style-wise as being a mana clone.
Hi, I'm Kaiser. I go by Cursed.Kaiser online. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm dressed mostly in Gothic Lolita, but I definitely experiment with other styles as well. And just want to let you know that we're going to start soon, but please hold questions to the end so that we can get to them, because we actually have a lot of really great information to present to you today. So we can start.
So here are a few things that we're going to be talking about today. So there's a lot to cover because there's so much to talk about with Gothic Lolita as its own, not just Lolita history, but Gothic Lolita specifically.
So Gothic Lolita 101. What is a Gothic Lolita? So Gothic Lolita is one of the three main substyles of Lolita fashion, which are, so it's Gothic, Classic, and Sweet. It combines the core elements of Lolita fashion with like the dark elegance and edge of like goth, which is really amazing. Next slide. So EGL and EGA, these terms were coined by Mana of Mohamed Moitié. That is his brand, but Mana was formerly a band member of Malice Miser. So Mana is he's one of the famous members that came out of that group, and Goth as well. He later on went to go find his own band after they were disbanded, and also created his fashion line, Moitié. EGL refers to Elegant Gothic Lolita, and it was used by the English-speaking community for shorthand of that term that he created. For EGA is Elegant Gothic Aristocrat, which is another term that he coined with his fashion brand. And it's a little bit more, it's a counterpart to EGL. It's a more mature androgynous kind of look. It has a longer silhouette, but please do not get it confused with the very, very masculine Gothic / aristocrat Victorian kind of style that's popularized in the West. This style definitely, I think one of the key things is on, touching on androgyny. So, hair, makeup, still relevant, still necessary to make a really, really cool EGA look. Next slide, please. So we can get into the anatomy of a Gothic Lolita. There's really common elements that make a Gothic Lolita coordinate really stand out. It's usually the darker makeup or the use of darker makeup. It can be simple, but just always think like, you want a little bit darker of an eye, darker of a lip. Then also the other thing about the Lolita outfits when it comes to Gothic Lolita is that it's very monochromatic usually. So it's usually all black, all white. You can do jewel tones or introduce jewel tones into your outfits to kind of help you have a pop of color. Those jewel tones are typically like burgundies, wines, emerald greens. There's gold, silver, also that very iconic Mana blue that he kind of pioneered within the style. There's a lot of also corset lacing, high heel platform shoes, or those really chunky shoes that we're all familiar with. High angular and square necklines, pointed collars, and there's also a lot of texture. So things like velvet, jacquard, shantug are really important because you're wearing a monochromatic outfit. You're going to need things like texture to kind of bring attention to the outfit and really make it stand out versus just, wearing all maybe like a black cotton coordinate. As far as iconography is concerned, it's usually a lot of religious iconography, specifically, I think Catholic, Christian kind of, crosses, also Gothic, but Gothic as in the architecture style. So if you see something like Iron Gate and a lot of Gothic prints, they really, really touch on kind of making a really cool version of the architecture that you see that from the past. There's also macabre and occult imagery. So usually, imagery of death and like memento mori, things like that. It still kind of follows the same rules as Sweet or Classic, and it has a lot of inspirations that are behind it. So let's talk about what Gothic Lolita is not. Just because an outfit is black does not mean that it is a Gothic Lolita outfit. If you look at the two angelic pretty dresses in the center, you can see that they're all black, but they have very, very kind of girly details And they're like bows and things like that that kind of detract more from that Gothic aesthetic. It's a little bit too over the top and cutesy. Because of that, Gothic is very like, sometimes less is more, and more of a really simple silhouette kind of really gets the message across. Just because you were wearing a spooky print also does not make it Gothic. Just because you are wearing crosses or religious imagery also does not make your outfit a Gothic outfit. You really need to look at a lot of the simplicity and the tailoring that's really important to make a Gothic outfit really successful. So it's not just enough to wear black. You also have to think about how you put it all together.
All right, so we're going to dive into some Gothic Lolita history. So in the beginning, in the early days of kawaii culture, Lolita was not as defined as we know it today. A combination of music and its icons, neo-romanticism in the West, some teenage rebellion, and the growing need for young women's independence all combined together to make the fashion that we now know and love. While looking back at these styles, it's easy to see how they eventually developed into Lolita fashion, even though they don't resemble the polished Lolita coordinates of the modern era. The main brands that gained followings were Milk, Pink House, Jane Marple, and Emily Temple Cute. Brands such as Angelic Pretty, BTSSB, and Atelier Pierrot also formed but didn't gain popularity until a few years later. And they weren't quite selling what they sell now, actually. These brands were frequently featured in Olive magazine, and fans of this publication took inspiration from styling and wore their best outfits to see their favorite indie rock bands in concerts. This translated to Visual Kei bands in the late 80s and, of course, the 90s. So here are some notable brands of the 1980s. So, fun fact, Milk was actually established in 1970, but two of the designers splintered off to form Emily Temple Cute and Jane Marple, which still operate today. So here are a few examples of Western and Japanese artists with teased hair, blurring gender lines, and strong visual presence. Visual Kei artists are influenced by the 1980s alternative boom, which inspired them for their own projects a few years later. While not a specific sound, they also took inspirations from many artists, but they were generally within the rock genre. We'll talk more about Visual Kei's impact on Lolita in the 90s section. So here are a few 1980s proto-Lolitas, basically, or also known as olive girls. So you'll see that they have long or short hemlines, not really an in-between. Their outfits were sensible for everyday life, but there's still thought put into the outfits. Low or no poof at all. Use of natural hair, no clip-ins, no crazy hair dye, probably meant so that they could be like blending into school or work afterwards. And they used shoes that were popular at the time, which were kitten heels and an almond or pointy toe. The aesthetic obviously isn't totally cohesive or really recognizable by modern standards of Lolita fashion, but you start seeing it just a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the 1990s era of Lolita fashion. So some people kind of refer to this era of fashion as proto-Lolita, and while we don't really have like an official designated name for this style, we can look at it as an overall precursor to what became Lolita fashion a little bit later in about a decade. So we also wouldn't really call their style Lolita by today's standards because it looks quite different, and there wasn't actually a clearly defined list of like Lolita rules yet. So it was basically an experimental, youth-oriented street style that shared a bunch of common elements, and it wasn't like a unified fashion movement that Gothic or all Lolita is now, basically. So we're going to discuss some of their ties to like alternative youth culture and Visual Kei and music in another slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the brands and some of the publications that were established in the 1990s. So basically, this is when a lot of brands that we know and love today were established, and most of them formed at the very tail end of the decade. So like in 1997 to 1999. So they weren't really like the originators of these 90s trends, but rather they reflected the 90s trends. And we started to see more publications that were focused on capturing this youth fashion, such as like Cara, Cutie, and Fruits. And they would capture these brands, of course, in their photos of street fashion kids, but they wouldn't be super highly represented because they were new. So we're going to take a look at some street snaps later, but I can kind of describe the style that was captured in these street snaps. And the main characteristics of this precursor style that would later become Lolita would be like unusual hairstyles, dark, solid colored dresses that were usually worn with tights or socks underneath to cover the legs, chunky sort of avant-garde goth style shoes, and then notably like including accessories from high fashion, more alternative brands such as Vivienne Westwood or Jean Paul Gaultier. So I also wanted to talk about Visual Kei a little bit because even though music is pretty much totally irrelevant to Lolita culture now, Gothic Lolita as a substyle would not exist without the goth subculture of the 1980s. So it's kind of important to recognize that. And there are still some like distant ties to the Visual Kei subculture as well. So basically, for those of you who don't know, Visual Kei is a broad musical scene / subculture that emerged in Japan in the late 1980s. And it kind of translates roughly to like visual style or visual system. And this refers to the over-the-top stage costumes that were worn by the artists. And these costumes were like all over the place in terms of style, but generally they were influenced by like glam rock and punk rock and hair metal and like all of those over-the-top artists that we kind of associate with the 1980s. And a lot of the time in Japan, they had a bit of a gothic or vampire or kind of baroque flavor, which is what kind of appeals to the goths. So also music-wise, Visual Kei artists don't all play the same type of music, so it's not a genre. Rather, it's just a scene. Like they would play a pretty wide variety of stuff that would appeal both to alternative kids and to kind of regular, like ordinary people, which I always thought was a little bit funny. So basically, throughout the 80s and 90s, these bands ended up gaining these gigantic, massive, super devoted fan bases. And it was super common for people who were big into Visual Kei and followed the bands around on tour to like dress to the nines when they went to these shows. And they were often really interested in alternative fashion themselves. So therefore, when they would go to a show, they might be wearing like proto-Lolita, or they would be like even cosplaying as band members or trying to emulate them in some way. So some of the bands that had kind of strong Lolita fan bases would be bands like Malice Muser, Bucktick, Lunacy, X Japan, and Loren. And those are just a couple of examples of bands that were not only popular among Japanese Lolitas, but actually ended up going worldwide and having fan bases outside of Japan.
All right, so I'm just going to talk about general 90s trend influence on this point of Lolita. So makeup at the time was minimal coverage. We see thinner brows, bolder lips, mascara, minimal eyeshadow, but if there was, it was frosted glitter or metallic. Note that Western hairstyles still favor a no-bang look even to this day, unlike Eastern hairstyles. So another notable example is Betsy Johnson's Fall Winter 1997. It shows a kind of a grunge maxi-length gothic look, which is you'll see in the street snaps a little later. Of course, platform chunky shoes, they contrasted the 80s delicate style, and they're just found in normal shops. Rocking horse shoes were also favored by J fashion wearers as they came out sort of at the end of the 80s, but became really popular in Japan in the 90s. So yeah, I have some Western celebrities in here. It's a little bit cursed, but you can see very clearly that there is similarities between all their makeup styles. And the nice thing is that the chunky shoe trend really stayed with goth. It just really worked out with the silhouette. And so here are some iconic pieces for Gothic Lolita. So like we said, it was really the end of the 90s that we saw brands sort of coming to. Moitier's nun dresses, they sparked pretty much a mini trend with other brands. So we'll see that later. Of course, their versatile bat bag. It matches pretty much every chord and is still popular today. And of course, there's not much to show. There's not a lot of archiving at this point. So we'll see an explosion in the later years. Here are some street snaps, a lot of them taken in the late 90s as well. There is a girl in the middle wearing the poofless black dress. She's actually a sweet Lolita wearing pretty, but she is notable in this slide because she says that she is a Lolita in publication. So it's one of the first times people have said or called themselves a Lolita. So you see some Western brands like Jean Paul Gaultier and Vivienne Westwood. And yeah, so long hemlines, the silhouette is starting to build, and poof is pretty optional, and so is headdresses.
Alrighty, so now I'm going to talk about the early 2000s, which is when I personally discovered Lolita. And I'm assuming a lot of the people in the chat who are older probably found Lolita at this time period as well. So it's a little bit nostalgic for all of us. So basically, by the early 2000s, Lolita had already become its like distinct identity, identifiable fashion. We could pinpoint a coordinate from the early 2000s and be like, yeah, that's definitely Lolita. But I also wanted to mention during this section that the separations between like the Lolita substyles were not really clear and distinct like they are now. And we categorize things a little bit different now than we do then. So for instance, if you look at a coordinate from that time, people might be calling it like Gothic, but today we would be calling it, oh, like that's old school sweet, but in all black. So there's you have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. So basically what happened in the early 2000s is that everything dark, edgy, and gothy was trending worldwide, not just in Japan. And over here on our side of the pond, there was definitely an uptick in interest in like Japanese pop culture. I'm sure this is when all of us baby weebs started watching anime and listening to J-rock, or at least that's what I was doing. And they were starting to gain like large international audiences for Japanese content. And in Japan, or sorry, worldwide, there were kind of a big surge of like more Gothic brands, more Gothic publications, Gothic media. And in Japan, these publications and the brands that were featured in these publications would become really, really important in kind of establishing the major defining characteristics of what Gothic Lolita was at the time. So we're going to go over some of those characteristics in the next slide, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about the publications. So some of these publications were Gothic and Lolita Bible, Alice Doll, Escargot Skin, and of course there were many more, some of which have been lost to time. And these publications would include things like lifestyle content and articles, like recipes, band reviews, interviews with designers, street snaps of people wearing Lolita fashion, and of course, most importantly, brand advertisements, which would show you, what the brands are making and what they want you to buy next season. So these were kind of like super important publications to the Lolita subculture at the time. And it's one of our only sources of like semi-reliable information about it in the early 2000s, because archiving still wasn't totally a thing yet. So speaking of archiving, another major event that happened in the early 2000s was when EGL LiveJournal formed it's formed in 2001. I didn't realize that it was that old because I think I joined around 2003 or 4. But basically, they would kind of become a central rallying point for the English-speaking Lolita world. So within just a couple of years, there was so much interest that they had several thousand members, and these members were from like all over the planet. And basically, people would discover EGL often through interest in Japanese culture, so through anime and manga, or through Visual Kei, like I did, or through J-rock, and even the movie Kamikaze Girls, which I believe came out in 2005, 4? Okay, whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But basically, this was like a discussion hub where people would share the very limited, badly translated information that they had, and also a ton of misinformation. Because we were looking at Gothic Lolita Bible and treating it as like a literal Bible.
Literal Bible.
Like all we had to go on, and it was painful, but that's how we treated it. So also because there was so much emphasis on the Gothic side of the alternative fashion world in these publications, Gothic Lolita was a super prominent substyle in the English-speaking international community for the first half of the decade. And this would change pretty rapidly. So we're going to talk about some Gothic Lolita fashion trends. So in the early 2000s, these fashion trends would kind of form the template that we would base our modern form of Gothic Lolita on now. So for the most part, we would see dresses in solid colors. Sometimes they would have like a very simple screen print, and it usually wasn't like a border print or an all over print. It would be like one little motif. Like Mache had this dress that has a little cross and rose. It's the same one that's in our presentation slides. So it would be something small like that. And for the most part, if they wanted to add visual interest, they would do things like add like lace and velvet or corset lacing, like on the dress I'm wearing. And because you're wearing like all black or all white, so you needed some texture to brighten things up a little bit, especially if you're coordinating with like neutral colors like navy or white or whatever. So even though there was like a lot of details, overall the designs were actually super minimalist and super austere. So an example of the minimalist trend would be the nun style designs that were sort of popularized by Atelier Bose and Moment Moitié. So there are also a couple of trends that were present at the time that are sort of like holdovers from the super edgy goth Visual Kei roots of the fashion. So in the early 2000s, we'd see a lot of brands release things like leather bustiers, which people made fun of in the mid 2000s because they're like, this isn't Lolita, this is for VK only. But lots of brands would release like leather accessories. There were lots of corsets. You would often see like matching skirt and bustier sets. Platform shoes, high-heeled shoes, fetish shoes were all very common. Like you would see advertisements in the GLB for Pleaser shoes, it's a stripper shoe company. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a little bit spicy. Some people would argue that that's not very Lolita lovely, but we just wore them. And then, so basically like leather and corsets and avant-garde footwear were kind of long-standing aspects of goth fashion that were imported into Gothic Lolita. So we're also going to talk a little bit about some hair and makeup trends from the time period. Oops, skip the slide. There we go. So for hair and makeup, there wasn't actually a lot of difference between Gothic, Sweet, and Classic makeup at this time because the styles themselves weren't super separated. And there's a lot of misconceptions that like Gothic makeup is like super heavy, super dark all the time. But like the makeup that we're wearing right now, like this would not be okay because I'm wearing like 3-inch long fake eyelashes. That would not be okay. It would be considered drag queenish, way too much. So the name of the game was to go like super simple, super light hand. If you're feeling extra spicy, you might put on some gray eyeshadow and like a purple berry lipstick if you're feeling super adventurous. But it's like, oh, pluck your eyebrows super thin and put on some mascara and maybe some pink lip gloss if you're a daring kind of girl. And that's kind of where it ended. If you tried to like cosplay Mana, like if you did blue lipstick or if you did like the white foundation, like people would roast you. They're like, why are you trying to cosplay? Mana's not a real Lolita. That's embarrassing. That's cringe, or whatever we called cringe back in 2005 or whatever. I don't think we called it cringe. Yeah,
lame. I don't know.
Okay, lame works. Yeah, that sucks, bro. And then for hair, it was kind of similar. So wigs were obviously a thing because not many people could deal with doing ringlet curls for realsies on their real hair. But people didn't wear wigs as the rule. It was like, oh, I'm doing something extra special, so I'm going to wear a wig. But for the most part, people would wear their natural hair. So the hair would often be like just natural black or dark brown, which are kind of natural Japanese people's hair colors. Sometimes you would see a lot of like brassy blonde or DIY brown that you can tell that a teenager did at home because, you know, these kids weren't rich. Most of the Lolitas at this time were very young, so they weren't getting their hair professionally done. And same, you could see like they used their heat tools to make some big barrel curls and kind of updos. Pretty much everybody had blunt bangs of some kind. And sometimes you would see like a bob cut or a hime cut with the side bangs at the cheek. Kind of back combing to make your ponytails really fluffy, and sometimes clip-ins, but overall it was nothing too crazy, nothing like the wigs that people wear on the regular nowadays. So if you were wearing a wig, people might have thought that might have been you trying to be a little too extra. So these are some quick examples of some brand ads and styling from the early 2000s. I think we just cropped these out of some Gothic Lolita Bibles. So we'll see some familiar brands on the top. We've got H. Naoto, we've got Atelier Perrault, we've got Pudumayo, Mame Moitié, and Alice and the Pirates. And then in the bottom, we've got Atelier Bose, we've got Visible, which people have mixed feelings about Visible. I know, I'm sorry. Because they made some really scary black and white ensembles that people were like, oh, that lace is Ida, but I like Visible. So
yeah, Visible's really cool brand. Yeah, I own some pieces. Yeah,
exactly. And we've also got Metamorphose, Mio Mazda, and as some honorable mentions, we've also got NA+H, we've got Black Peace Now, Despair, Arachnophobia, Juliette et Justine, which actually did have a Gothic kind of lineup once upon a time, which you would never think now looking on their current stuff. And also like Kazuka Ogawa, Mille and Accentrique, which is sadly a dead brand now.
Oh, so here's some of the iconic pieces from the early 2000s, and a lot of these are highly collectible now. So Victorian Maiden also had a gothy era. This was in the early 2000s. Actually, Chelsea does have this dress. It's the Sister OP. It came in skirts as well. Of course, Metamorphose Hospitality Doll series. It came in several cuts and colors as well, along with matching bags and accessories. Then we also have Moitié Shearing Ribbon OP. It's the white one near the bottom. We have the Pudumayo lace bunny bag there. It's just sitting chilling. We also have Atelier Bose's Roland jacket, which got re-released several times, but it didn't really pick up steam until a few years later. But we had to put it in here because that's sort of when it came out. And of course, we have the Angelic Pretty high neck Shentung OP, which is, we actually have some fun facts about it. Kaiser, why don't you let us know?
Yeah, so the designer for Enchantedly, Fumiko, is actually the one in this picture. She also, she was Enchantedly, Baby the Stars Shine Bright previously, and then also she is in the Kamikaze Girls movie at the end. So yeah, like this iconic photo, very iconic person that if you don't know about Fumiko, you should totally look her up because she's awesome.
So where is this dress? We don't know. No one seems to own it. And it's very Gothic, appropriate for an Angelic Pretty dress. So
the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail.
It's been seen once in my lifetime that I remember on Yahoo auctions, and never since then. So
Oh,
gone forever.
you'll never see it.
All right, so of course we have to include the Victorian Maiden full-size coffin. We have Mate's frill bat umbrella. We have the thorny socks, logo cross pendant. Mate at this point had an entire line of silver simple cross jewelry, which is highly collectible today. So of course, we're still running with the chunky shoe trend from the 90s. So high-heeled chunky platforms like Metamorphose, strap pumps were very popular amongst goths. There was a lot of variety in footwear, but most brands had a variation of the shape and style of shoe. Many Gothic Lolitas just bought the shoes that were from their favorite Gothic Lolita brands, like Black Peace Now or Mama Moitié. But you'll also see brands like Pleaser, like we mentioned earlier. The coffin was like $1,000, so no one actually owned it, but we have to put it in because it's just like goth goals. Like every goth wants a coffin in their house at some point for photos, for a shelf.
Yeah, and even
they released it too.
I need it.
I wonder who actually bought the re-release, because how would you ship an entire coffin like internationally? I feel like the logistics would be awful. DHL would do it.
$800 coffin.
It's literally just make it yourself. It's literally the easier thing to do. Just make it yourself. Find yourself a carpenter, pay him for the day, and get some wood.
But it's not brand.
But it's not brand, so it depends how much you really love Victorian Maiden. All right, so here are some early 2000s street snaps. You can see from what we've explained before, just sort of the makeup, the hair, just sort of the non-complex. Just it's a dress, or it's socks, shoes, maybe a headdress, a nice bag. The picture in the middle actually inspired me to be a Lolita, actually. So thank you so much, Mana cosplayer, sitting on the bridge, like. This is great. All those Matu fans. I'm assuming that they were going to a concert later that day. But yeah, you can see that there's no prints. And if there is, it's very minimal. Here are a few more from Gothic Lolita Bible. Black and white is king here. So we're seeing some of that. We see Mate sharing OP in the bottom there. We see an early version of Atelier Boz's Carol in the other corner. This is what people think of when you say Gothic Lolita, and it's like the kind of thing that you see on your Google results as well.
The classic look.
Classic look. Can't go wrong.
So now we're going to talk about the late 2000s, which is like a worst era of Lolita fashion, in my opinion. Like, it was good, but it was also very painful. So in line with some of the other Lolita substyles, in the late 2000s, Gothic was also starting to move towards more emphasis on prints and more elaborate designs, and moving away from that super simplistic, austere, like serious look that it had before. And actually, Mate released some of their most iconic collectible pieces from this era. So we were also seeing that reflected in what people were actually wearing. So print ads and street snaps were both showing a little bit more detail and a little bit more oomph in their coordinates, so to speak. And I also thought that we couldn't really mention the late 2000s without talking about two newish trends that popped up. And these trends are punk Lolita and pirate Lolita. And they're not really sub-styles in their own right, so I'm not really sure what to call them, because they're not really themes either. I don't know, whatever. So basically, punk Lolita combined like super cheesy, stereotypical 1970s British punk aesthetic with Lolita fashion and silhouette. And so you would see like poofy dresses in tartan and like distressed or DIY looking accessories, and like not Doc Marten boots, but like similar style, like military chunky type boots. And brands that catered to this look would be like Putumayo and Maximum and Alice and the Pirates and Peace Now, those types of brands. And then we also had Pirate Lolita pop up around the same time. And this was more or less created and popularized entirely by Alice and the Pirates, which I think we already mentioned is a sister brand of Baby the Stars Shine Bright. So because of these two things specifically, it was like a newbie trap. Like, a lot of people saw this stuff being knocked off on these terrible eBay stores. And like the ones with like the really mini skirts and like the attached leg warmers that were like flare leg warmers and those types of things, and the fingerless gloves. And they'd be like, oh my God, I need to wear this. And I bought that stuff.
Yes. Or something.
Yeah, Jill
on eBay. I love you.
what was the other one? Like Red Queen, Black Legion. There were tons of them. And
Rave.
yeah, so this took off, and it's only tangentially related to Gothic Lolita because they like borrowed a lot from Gothic, but they weren't actually Gothic. We just wanted to kind of mention them because it's important. And it's also where a lot of people got their first foot in the door with Lolita fashion. And I actually remember reading a translation of a Japanese 2-channel post, and it was like kind of older Lolitas, older meaning like 18 years old, and they were making fun of the 14-year-old Lolitas who were like, I'm shopping at Putumayo and stores like that, and they're like, that's not elegant Gothic romance aristocrat bam enough for me. Like, it's so teeny bopperish, which is funny because they're just big teeny boppers like at 18. Sorry to the 18-year-olds in the audience.
Sorry, 18-year-olds. You're also a child.
So, and now on to the slightly cursed content that I was referring to. So this is kind of the time period when Lolita started to enter the mainstream consciousness a bit more, and it wasn't just something that alternative weirdos on the internet knew about. It was something that like your mom was watching on TV. And that's because we were seeing Lolita in places like, there was a really bad episode of America's Next Top Model where they go to like Closet Child and Metamorphose, and the models just like completely drag everyone that's in the store. Like, what is this stupid baby clothes?
So rude.
It was super salty and rude, but there was stuff like that. And then there was like What Not to Wear, where I think it was a Lolita from New York, possibly, and she went on the show looking for help with her wardrobe, and they're like, what are these stupid quirky Japanese baby clothes, throw those in the garbage. And I watched that, and I was like, one, I was heartbroken for the person, but also I was like, damn, those clothes are sick, bro, I need those. So it kind of like exposed Lolita to a wider audience, even if it was through a very cursed format. And another couple of things that happened was the Gothic Lolita Bible was translated and released into English. So people were, at this point, they were like, oh my God, the sky is falling. The normies have found us. We need to hide. Like, Lolita's going to become mainstream and it's all ruined. And spoiler alert, nothing happened. But yeah, it was kind of a time when we were starting to get a little bit more public exposure, and it was introducing a ton more people into it. So like EGL blew up. We were at like 17K members by the end of around 2009, if Wayback Machine is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is called the blurst slide of the presentation because it's like far enough back to be within memory, but it's like enough to be like just a little bit cursed. So at this point, with all the media showing what Lolita is, we have celebrities, Western celebrities, using Lolita in their stage outfits. They appear to be wearing Lolita. Some of them do actually wear authentic pieces. I know that Amy Lee was wearing H. Naoto, and she was actually styled by him. We have a couple of angelic pretty dresses in here, of course. So I think that helped people get really excited about that. The Gwen Stefani slightly exploitative era where she had like backup dancers that couldn't speak in interviews. Yeah. So Harajuku, what was it called?
Harajuku Girls.
Yeah.
Bless all the parents that thought that they were helping you with your cords by buying you items from that, because I had several pieces and they were butt ugly. They were so ugly. Anyways, sorry, Mom. And then we start seeing some experimentations. So people were trying to literally put a trend or another hobby and smash it with Lolita, and there's varying degrees of success. Some people it didn't go beyond even one person, maybe even died out after a few weeks, but we see a little bit of cyber Lolita starting out because that's what was happening in clubs, in the goth club right at that point. But there was also Scene Kid explosion as well, so they had sometimes similar colors and styles, so that sort of happened as well. I didn't have any pictures of Scene Lolita in here, but you can just picture it in your mind's eye. And of course, Lolitas in anime, people just know. Like, they're like, oh, Misa, or Suganto, like, they know the characters, they sort of understand. So we got sort of the cosplay Lolita thing happening as well, and conventions, of course, also exploded during that time. Fond memories for me. I liked this kind of stuff personally, but that's just because, I don't want to hate the past too much, but it did help people discover Lolita. So that's what the significance is. Bohemian Lolita. Oh my God.
Embrace your cringe.
Cyber Lolita lasted. I know. We're reading comments as we're presenting, so yeah.
I really wanted to be Velvet Bat because that was when I was having my like industrial phase, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna wear Cyberlocks with Lolita when I can actually buy Lolita, and I'm gonna wear it with this garbage like thrift store dress. It was bad
with the low waist.
I don't want to think about it. It hurts. So late 2000s trends. So we're getting into somewhat more recent memory. So overall, things aren't too visually different from the early 2000s in terms of like designs, but prints had become a lot more popular, and they opened up a lot of new coordinate possibilities because now you have extra colors and themes that you can base your coordinate around. So that being said, some people were mad because people are always mad, but secondly, because they're like, prints are not elegant, they are not somber, they're loud, and Gothic Lolita is supposed to be like subdued and goth and spooky and whatever. So people are like, why would you put a gate on a dress that ruins the dress? Spoiler alert, it's the most popular dress of all time. Yep. But,
architecture.
Yeah, oops, should have bought that Iron Gate in 2007, huh? So the main theme about Gothic prints was that they were featuring kind of architectural and classical Gothic motifs like flowers, churches, that kind of stuff. And because prints were becoming colorful, we were also starting to see Gothic coordinates with new colorways, and Moche actually developed their signature black and blue, the electric bright blue colorway during this time period. And that was featured in a lot of their prints. So almost everything they made was available in that black and electric blue combo. And when we look at some other brands like Alice and the Pirates, we saw that Vampire Requiem came out in some weird colorways, like that kind of bluey lavender color that that the OP comes in. And that wasn't really a thing before. Like before, you wouldn't really see goths wearing lavender. That was not done. So that kind of would set the stage for more colorful coordinates to start coming out later. And other things that happened, we started seeing a lot more wigs and hair pieces, but they were still not the norm. People were still working with what they had. So you would see sometimes maybe somebody with a clip-in and a natural color, but people were still working with their natural hair. But of course, because scene was a thing, we've got like Kool-Aid dyed hair with the roots growing out, and I'm not calling myself out at all here. But that was definitely a thing. And the other trend that I wanted to mention, it's like a trend that people have so many mixed feelings about. I know Juju feels very strongly about these mini hats. Mini hats were a trend, and I like firmly believe that it's because they're really easy to make. So like there were all of these awful tutorials on Each Yellow about how to make your own absolutely garbage Party City tiered mini hat. And everyone kind of cringed internally, but they would still wear them because it's like, it's still Lolita appropriate headgear, and people would fight about them. But brands started doing them too. Like, I think this is when there was that very cursed moche straw mini hat that I remember seeing it on sale for like 3 years by this one seller, and no one wanted it because who wants a straw mini? Oh, I don't.
That was a weird piece.
What a weird time to be alive.
Country goth Lolita.
Yeehaw!
Isn't it just like
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, Fields of Nephilim.
I'm here for it.
All right, so here are some iconic pieces from the late 2000s. You might, now that it's more like recent memory, you might notice or remember these pieces because a lot of them have been re-released actually. So the Roland jacket did come out a few years earlier, but they became more commonplace here now that people started to layer them on top of things. Love Moon Princess Stained Glass Angel by Baby the Starshine Bright was appreciated later by Gothics as the stained glass trend came after it. So we'll talk about stained glass later. Gathered Chiffon, a staple, has been re-released like every year by Alice and the Pirates. It exudes like simplicity and elegance in one piece. And you can remove the pearly thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's nice. Of course, Moitier's Iron Gate and Gothic Arch are praised for its simplicity and versatility. They were slightly like a nod back to the earlier days, but they still had that impact and was still fresh enough to be from this era for sure.
And they got slept on too. Like Iron Gate, within a few months after its release, you could easily buy it from CD Japan. It did not sell out immediately. No. And then within like a year, they were going for like retail price, double price, and then, you know, Q 2020, and it's $2,000 for the OP.
Yeah, crazy. All right, so here are just a couple street snaps. We start seeing the hair getting a little bit bigger. So is the silhouette. A little bit more makeup as well. So more street snaps feature candid shots of J-fashion lovers congregating in Harajuku at this point. And as people came to show off their cords, so people kind of were hoping to get their photos being taken by their favorite publications. So there was a bit of like a culture happening there as well.
Notice me fruits.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And we start seeing some see-through fabrics appearing in brand catalogs. It really makes sense for Japan because it's really hot there sometimes. So we're starting to see a little changeover to the thinner fabrics, a little bit more breezy stuff. Makes sense for climate reasons, of course. But we're all crying because we all want velveteen, but that's because we're Canadian. It's always cold. Like, it's cold all the time here.
Alrighty, so early 2010s, which is kind of the beginning of the modern era that we're all living through, and we all pretty much know what's happening right now. So I'm not going to go into super deep detail. Oh, look, I'm unintentionally twinning with our slide. Cool. I did not mean to do that, but here we are. So let's talk about some of the couple of things that happened during this brand. So we started seeing some super elaborately detailed prints because technology to make these screen prints had gotten much better, and they had access to higher quality stuff to make these prints. So we were starting to see things like border prints combined with all over prints to make these super detailed dresses, and they were becoming really popular in all substyles because this is when we were seeing like the Milky Planets and those type of dresses where it's just everything everywhere. And this, of course, extended to Gothic eventually as well, but we were a little slower on the uptake because we're stubborn people. So prints were basically incorporating a lot more color, a lot more complicated designs, and we were also starting to see some different and unusual fabrics being used. So one of the trends that I wanted to mention with prints is that Alice and the Pirates started releasing like Halloween and horror-inspired prints, which they weren't really a thing before. Like the prints always tended to be quite Gothic, but now we were starting to see like vampires and candy and skulls and moons and kind of like cute, playful, like a cute and more playful spin on Gothic. And then we also had brands like Chantilly kind of getting in on that trend as well. And they were basically just a lot more of a playful and whimsical approach to goth, whereas before it had been quite serious. So this was kind of a welcome change because people just wanted to see something a little bit different because like the moche and bows type of style had been dominant before, and it's a lot more mature and like somber. So I like it because that's what I wear, but admittedly it's not as fun. So people wanted some fun. And I also wanted to mention kind of the OTT trend and what it did to the Lolita community, because it was going on with a couple of things at the same time. So because dresses were getting a lot more elaborate, people were starting to make these super elaborate coordinates to go on with these crazy dresses. And the OTT, which means over the top, which is exactly what it sounds like, means like everything at maximum. So OTT trend really took off during this time, and it kind of reached its peak around 2012. And OTT Sweet Lolita had kind of become the face of Lolita. So if you said Lolita fashion, the image that would come to your mind would be someone wearing OTT Sweet with like candy colored hair and like tea party shoes and super bright, vibrant pastel colored prints. And this is because at the same time, Lolita communities were starting to migrate away from long form content. So things like LiveJournal and personal blogs and like the Daily Lolita like casual coordinate sharing group on LiveJournal as well. And they were starting to move towards more visually oriented platforms. So those would be things like Tumblr and Instagram and Facebook, where people look at the photo and they don't really read anything and they don't care to read anything. So one, most of these platforms are not really well equipped for discussion or archiving of information, and they're better for sharing like bite-sized snaps of and images. So basically, there was basically a shift towards more visually appealing and striking content, aka things that are not goth, because why would you want to look at somebody wearing like all black with a cross on it when you could be looking at somebody who's wearing OTT Sweet, which is like very visually like punchy and interesting and cool to look at. So it would attract a lot more attention on these kinds of spaces. And Gothic Lolita was sort of like, even though a lot of like iconic prints and stuff were coming out, it was starting to fade a little bit into the background because there were just other more interesting things going on at the time. So it was starting to lose its kind of dominance as the like major public image of Lolita. And I'm not sure if this is a cause or if this is like a result, but a lot of changes were happening in the Gothic brand market as well. So we were starting to see some changes, such as Black Peace Now, rest in peace, went bankrupt in 2013. And the designer later went on to start the brand Shegley, a Gothic classic brand that we all love. And that was within the same year as well. So that's quite a big change. And then Moche actually closed all of their physical shops in Japan and went online only, which scared the crap out of all of the Moche fans. So let's talk a little bit about trends. I'm not going to go too long here because you guys can see the picture and we already know what these things are. So prints were a big deal. Gothic was no exception. We were seeing lots of like crazy, colorful prints, and that would allow for us to see like a stained glass trend where we're starting to see like stained glass prints on absolutely everything, everywhere. We were moving away from the simple black and white. We're going towards like blue and red, and we're even seeing like metallic colors like silver and gold, like the dress that I'm wearing. And this was like in both like mainstay brands and in indie brands. Everyone wanted to get in on this colorful stuff. And I also thought it was worth mentioning that Moitié and Atelier Pierrot released a couple of dresses that people have feelings about. So there's stuff, I like to call them like the Photoshop collage prints, where they were basically like, they weren't really cohesive illustrations. It was just like a lot of stuff photoshopped onto a dress, and they're like, ta-da, this is a print. And stuff like Moitié's alchemy dress that made a lot of people angry, and like those cat dresses that Atelier Pierrot has with like clowns and cats and random angels and stuff like that. And people were mad about these because they're like, this is not elegant. Ugh, gross. And you would get people kind of roasted on them, but I look back fondly on them as like nostalgic. And then in terms of the silhouette, waistline started moving way up. So we were starting to see the dreaded baby doll cut and a lot of empire waist. And of course, that stuff was always existing, but it started to become like standard rather than just like an option, which made me personally unhappy. And
worst thing that ever happened to Lolita, I think. It
burn
just
baby
does
dolls.
not look good on a lot of people, even if you have small chests. Like
No.
it just looks a little weird, you know?
As someone with no chest, baby dolls make me look like I'm wearing a sack. So that's not.
It's the same with large-chested people too.
No.
You're just wearing a sack. So
It's a bag,
like,
a drawstring bag.
You're spending $400, $500 on a dress, and it's not tailored. It's kind of a ripoff. It feels like a ripoff.
Yeah, I want to show everyone like the snatched waist, like
Snatched waist.
yeah, 100% snatched. And so in order to like accommodate the baby doll look, we were also starting to see a lot less heavy fabrics like cotton and velvet and shantung, and starting to see more floaty stuff like chiffon. And for better or worse, chiffon is here to stay. We're seeing chiffon everything all the time. Again, people were not happy about this because they're like, velvet is expensive and chiffon looks cheap, therefore velvet is better. I don't really agree with that argument, but yeah. And in line with this, hair and makeup was also starting to change. So this is kind of when the English-speaking community decided that they also wanted to be gal in addition to Lolita. And we started seeing gal hair with like the really big curly gal wigs and spiked lashes and circle lenses and like makeup like turned up to 11. We're no more of that subtle, oh, just wear some mascara and you're done makeup of the past. We're going like full-blown makeup. And same for like hair. If you did have natural hair, which people would probably be like, oh, your natural hair is way too flat for this. You need some bigger hair.
The wig roast.
Yeah, it was like you get dragged for not having big enough hair, so you felt like you had to wear a wig. And we were starting to see wigs in kind of unusual colors, like these kind of caramel brown. Blondie was like a common color, like bright blonde, gray, just like colors that don't really occur in nature. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that there was like a brief trend where we saw a lot of sort of like Rococo inspired stuff with big ruffles, trumpet sleeves, hard bonnets, and people were starting to hold like accessories for photos. So like people holding scepters.
I want a giant fork still.
I would be down with the fork. And like, I'm kind of okay with scepters because I forget who told the story, but it was about the girl who had to like fight off a robber with her baby, the Star Shine Bright scepter.
Laura's friend.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wild. So know what? I can't hate on scepters entirely. So these are a couple of dresses that are some examples of iconic pieces from the early 2010s that really exemplify these trends. So we've got Black Cat, Witch and the Apple Tree, which is an example of how Alice and the Pirates really takes like a more fairy tale, cute approach to Gothic, where we've got like, you know, we have the angular neckline, the flutter sleeves, corset bodice, which are super Gothic. And then we've got like this cute little print with a witch and a cat, and it's spooky and Halloween themed, but it's not like a sugary sweet Halloween type of deal. So I own this dress. I'm biased. I really like it. And then we've got Gloria stained glass, and that is like a very popular stained glass print that kind of showcases the use of colors in Gothic. We've also got one of Alice and the Pirates Vampire series dresses, a Vampire Prelude in the best colorway. Objectively, it's ivory. Don't argue with me. And it's got some architectural elements such as some gates and windows and some flowers. And the other two iconic items here are the Triple Fortune Rose Bonnet. It's a very big halo-like bonnet with some big feathers, and that's just kind of like an example of how OTT was becoming the norm, because before that, hard bonnets, you'd see them sometimes, but they weren't really a thing. And then all of a sudden everyone owned this like $250 bonnet for some reason. I have
the
one
same
too.
one. I sold it to you.
I'm like dragging people who own the bonnet, and I bought the bonnet.
I know. You know what? It instantly really fancifies a coordinate. So
Yeah.
I mean, this is the start of the Gothic Classic Alliance here too. So we're starting.
Packed.
It's like, you guys, you have your brand shutting down. Our brands are shutting down. Let's go. Let's combine.
Oh my god, that's really valid and really sad. And I still like my bonnet.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention the habillage corset tights. So these were something that you do see sometimes in the English-speaking non-Japanese community, but it's a very, very popular item in Japan in particular. So you'll still see people wearing these, and they came in all sorts of different colors and prints, and they've been re-released tons and tons of times. Next up, I wanted to talk about moche specifically because I've already told you guys I'm a mannequin. So this was a really good time for moche, like in terms of designs, even though moche itself was like struggling. So they put out some of their like greatest prints of all time. We've got Divine Cross in black and gold, which is what I'm wearing today. We've got Silent Moon, Ruins Cathedral, and Sleeping Garden. And people had some weird feelings about these when they came out, again, because they're like, why is this so elaborate? This isn't the classical moche look, but they did really well. Same with the stained glass on the bottom right, which is not the same print as Holy Stained Glass, just if you're going to look that up. It's not the same one. Again, featuring lots of different colors. It's got a gradient, which is just kind of highlighting the changes in technology that allowed for these kinds of prints to be made. And I also wanted to include the Holy Cross lace-up ribbon socks, which were available in pretty much every single colorway that Moche had ever done. So we had like black and green, black and red, black and blue, black and gold, black and silver, everything, literally every colorway. And they were kind of like an iconic staple piece. Like if you had these and you wore them in your cord, people would be like, oh my God, she is a true Moche fan because she has those socks. This was before the re-release, before everyone had them, but before they were exclusive. And
you're wearing the black and gold ones right now.
I am. I have the full set.
Yeah.
Just bragging a little bit.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh my God, check this guy out.
But yeah, these were like the socks to have, and people will resell them for like $150. I'm not even joking, because there was no re-release in sight.
I spent like $100, and then like a month later they re-released it, and I'm like, oh my God, no.
It happens to everyone.
But the lace is different. Like there's a different lace to them.
Yeah,
this is the new lace, actually.
Is it?
It is.
Oh. Did I make a boo boo on the slide?
Just gonna point it out.
Okay, thanks. So here's some kind of street snaps and photos from the GLB that are kind of explaining some of these trends in action. So we're seeing lots of moche, lots of Alice and the Pirates, unnaturally dyed hair, big wigs, way more makeup, unnatural hair colors, and like even the kind of traditional austere moche look, like the girls who are wearing the Silent Moon twins in the middle, like that's a lot more complex than historical moche. Oh, and they're both wearing the lace-up socks too, so you know that they're the real deal. They're real moche fans.
All right, so we're going to the late 2010s era, which is pretty much this is recent memory for us, guys. 2020, it was long or short, depending on your perspective. But so we're starting to see, like, Gothic Lolita always had a heavy focus on Catholic imagery, but the OTT trend that started early in the decade took a little longer to get to us. And when it did, it really kicked up all the Catholic imagery up a notch, and we will discuss that in the next slide. So we saw, like I said earlier, there was a rise in Gothic classic crossover pieces, as well as a few new indie brands specialized in this look. So we have a few listed here. Notable examples: Shiglet, Miho Matsuda, Julia A. Justine, I Do Declare, Vudu Dolly, all cater to that aesthetic. Ichino Oto went online only in 2016, Putumayo closed in 2017. And Moate was acquired by Tanacro, which owns Wonderwelt. So we see an interest in nostalgia toward the end of the decade, the sort of the old school trend. So with Moate's revival, it was great timing as they bring back some of the remixes and re-releases of their older items. So anyone who missed out on the earlier items had a chance to get that look again, which was really cool.
In more sizes too, which is really important, because people had complained that like, Well, if you look at older moche, a lot of it is unsheared. It's very petite, and the cuts only really fit certain body shapes, like not just a petite waist, but like a certain bust size as well. So it was really nice to see that they were trying to be more inclusive of different body shapes.
Yeah. And they opened up to sort of the Western audience as well. Like they didn't treat us as like a random couple people. Like they actually brought some focus to us, which is really nice.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to talk really quick about some late 2010s trends. So basically, as Julia was saying, a lot of these trends are basically like highly polished, better like versions of older trends that were established in the early 2000s, because there's a lot of interest in old school Lolita period right now, which would include Gothic. So a lot of people are just taking like older stuff and they're styling it the exact same way that it would have been styled back then, just basically with better hair and makeup, because we have better access to that kind of stuff now. So because of that, older dresses from all the Gothic brands like Moche, corsets and bustiers and big rectangle headdresses, all that type of stuff is very trendy again. And I also want to mention one super notable change is that it's no longer cringy to look like Mana with your makeup. So no one will be like dragging you if you wear blue lipstick and you have like big hair and all of that stuff. Because apparently if you just wait long enough for something to end, like it becomes cool later. So it's no longer cringe. So if you want to cosplay Mana, go for it. Just embrace it. Embrace your cringe. So basically, since this era is all about putting a new twist on some old throwbacks, we're seeing a lot of like nun-style dresses come back, tons of Catholic iconography, like way more than ever before. Not just in Gothic Lolita, like this is happening in Sweet and Classic too. Like there's the Angelic Pretty and Baby the Stars Shine Bright all have like nun-inspired stuff, where they have like Catholic Maria and those like those types of dresses. So it's just a thing. Everyone's on the nun train, but this is ours. We started that. This is a goth trend, and everyone else decided that, you know, they were gonna jump on the same bandwagon as well. Just saying. So we're also seeing like Catholic inspired accessories. So we're seeing people with like rosaries, halos, crowns, that type of stuff. Oh, veils, wimples, nun style wimples and hats, that type of stuff.
I like that word.
Wimple. Sure, adults. And then aside from rehashing old trends and putting a new spin on it, people are starting to experiment with a little bit more complicated type of looks. So we're incorporating lots of different layers now, different lengths of pieces to create a more interesting type of silhouette. And we're also seeing like some interesting crossovers happening. So we're seeing people style like some of the more edgy stuff from like Angelic Pretty, like Holy Lantern, those types of dresses. And we're seeing them styled in a Gothic way. And there's a ton of like intersection and crossover between the Gothics and the classics, because we both realize that we like kind of like weird vintage stuff and spooky things. So we're just like, we're friends now. So there's also crossovers with subcultures that are outside of Lolita. So we're seeing a lot of crossover with trad goth. So we're seeing stuff like super heavy makeup, big backcombed hair, 80s style, pointed boots. And those are all being incorporated into Lolita fashion now. And since I was talking about boots, I also wanted to mention we're starting to see like some atypical shoe choices. So I'm seeing a lot of people wearing the Fluvog Cubist cupcakes. I'm seeing like Vivienne Westwood pumps, when we usually wouldn't necessarily associate Vivienne Westwood with Gothic, like depending on the style of shoe. And people are just wearing like weird shoes, but they make it work. The other thing is I wanted to talk about legwear. So Gothic legwear has always been pretty boring. It's like lace tights or like black over the knee socks, or maybe socks with the print if you're feeling slightly spicy, but nothing too groundbreaking. But now everyone's wearing printed tights, just like those epiotage corset tights that I talked about before. Again, this is just because better printing technology is available. So now we can actually see the designs on tights without them getting stretched out as soon as you put your foot inside. So these are some iconic pieces from the late 2010s. Some of you are going to be like, oh, I love that. And some of you are going to be like, gross. So the first one is Istamori's Nameless Poem OP. And this is kind of a must-have item that really reignited that interest in the nun style of Gothic Lolita that had become popularized by like Atelier Beaux and Moche like a decade ago. So it was first released in 2014. So I wasn't sure if I should include it, but I figured because it became really popular a bit later, we should just kind of stick it in this slide. And everyone has worn this or owned it.
You had it.
I did. Did you have it?
No, actually, no.
Smart.
I want the black and red one. That one's kind of cool.
The black and red is really cool. And like the one there, it's inverted the black
white.
with the white. But like everyone has the black and white basic one. We gotta pick out some of the other colorways.
And we start seeing some interest in Chinese brands here. So that was non-Japanese brand that got really big with goths. So that was pretty monumental, I think.
Yeah, they took off. And like same with Hinuli. Like they'd had a bunch of Gothic releases prior to this, of course, like St. Vitus, Stained Glass, and some of their other prints. But the story you don't know is like, I look at this one in particular because it's quite different from your average Lolita fare. Like it's got the skeleton bodice and it's got the pentagram strap neckline. These things were really polarizing. A lot of people looked at this and they were just like, oh, this is too casual. It's not Lolita at all. And some people were really into it because it was kind of different and edgy. So we started seeing a lot of like edgelord coordinates. I don't mean that in a bad way because I personally like it, even though I think it's a little edgelordy. But we're seeing them with like leather harnesses and demonia boots and that type of stuff. Yeah.
Cringe is dead, so it's okay.
I'm here for it. I was here for the e-girl crossover briefly.
That was also my first brand dress I ever bought.
Yeah, it was.
I bought that when I first got back into Lolita after a major hiatus, and I'm like, oh my god, prints are a thing now. I have to buy a printed thing. So I'm like, oh look, it has all the things I like. I like skeletons, and yeah, skeletons are gonna be my thing now. And of course, I sold all of it, and now I'm like back to classic Moite stuff.
All right.
And new Gothic Arch, I mean, it speaks for itself. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with it because it's hard to get the original Gothic Arch, and it's also very, very small and unsheared.
Yeah.
And no one wants to pay $800 for a dress they have to modify, so just buy a Neo Gothic Arch for half the price, and it has corset lacing. So here are some more iconic pieces from the late 2010s. So we were starting to see like lots of different textures and opacities of fabric, and this was exemplified by some of the blouses we were seeing. There was a lot of sheer and lacy blouses being worn, and there still are today. So one of them was the Hinuli and I Do Declare collaboration blouse. It's that blouse.
I have it in 40 colors.
Yeah, like it's good. It goes with everything.
It's good.
Like everyone has this blouse in some color, I think. I wish I had it.
I wish I didn't sleep on that.
I'm stupid. I was like,
I'm stupid.
I was looking at it and I was like, do I really need another transparent blouse? And then it sold out and I was like, yeah, I do.
No one else can sell theirs because it's so versatile.
It's so good, but oh well, one day. So that was one of the most iconic blouse releases. And there were a ton that were very kind of similar, in a similar vein, with like balloony sleeves or unusual sleeve shapes, sheer, big bows, that type of stuff. We've also got the Sheglete restraint corset and all of its many, many, many variations. It comes in a lot of different colors, different fabrics. There's a vest version where it comes up over your shoulders and has an underbust vest. This one is the lace-up side version. And everyone should own this because it's cheap and it makes your coordinate instantly look very cool. You can put this over like an ugly dress if like it has an ugly print detail or it looks really cheap. If you put it on that, your dress looks expensive. So just buy one. The other item is the Antique Beast Black Cat headdress. And it is actually called the Black Cat headdress. I looked it up. It's not the bat headdress, but everyone calls it that because that's what it looks like. So this is one of those things that every Gothic Lolita already owns or should own because it's very easy to get. The designer opens every couple months. And it's one of those items that every sweet Lolita buys a month before Halloween on Lace Market for $80. And then they just don't buy it from the original designer.
I have it. She has it. You have it in a couple colors now.
Yeah, I do. Because it goes with everything.
It goes
really
with
cute.
Moite really well.
It does, but it works well with cute things too. Like if you wear this with like Guilty Melting Sweets or like the Halloween prints from AP, like this would look good with like Halloween treats or I don't know. What's their other dress that has the bat neckline? They had a bunch.
You're asking me what pretty print name? Oh my god, I can't.
I don't know. Angelic Pretty, Angelic Bat, Magic Halloween,
Sprinkle Fairy, Teddy Bear Parade. I don't know.
Good enough. You know what I'm talking about.
Don't care.
I care. I just can't remember. I like Angelic Pretty. I'm not trying to shade them, even though I'm shading them. So next, we're going to go over some street snaps super quick that sort of show these trends in action. So you can see on the coordinate on the left, she's got like an underbust vest. She's got a jabot. She's got a skirt. She's wearing the printed tights. She's got everything. She's even wearing the Nat+H like kind of strippery shoes. Like I have those shoes. They are very, very, very high. So they're not like your conventional Lolita shoes. They've also got like a stiletto heel, which is not very typical. In the middle, we've got these girls wearing tons of layers. The girl on the right's wearing a corset. She's wearing a jacket. She's wearing an overskirt. She's also got those habillage corset tights. And same with the girl on the left. She's got kind of an overskirt going. She's got a jacket with an attached vest. She's got like the mink stole, lots of layering. Same with the girl on the right with her capelet over top of a JSK, which is over top of an overdress. I guess it must have been winter in Japan because I can't imagine wearing this in like anything that's not December in like Japan. They would die. So these are some images that we've used with permission from the people. So thank you for donating your coordinates. You guys are lovely.
One of them is watching right now. Hi, Aria.
I hope more than one of them is watching. Like, better. So we're seeing lots of layering here. So we've got House Haunter. She's wearing a Shegli corset vest over top of her white JSK to create some contrast. We just see the little white iron gate peeking out there. On Dies Macapa, we've got, she's wearing the I Do Declare and Hey Newly blouse. You can see the sheer sleeves. It looks great with like that mixed fabric. Looks like Atelier Pirot dress with like kind of an overskirt over top of a chiffon underlayer. And she's also got printed tights. And Grim Firefly is wearing kind of a sweet, angelic, pretty dress with a corset and a blouse that has some sheer lace panels. And she's wearing Vivienne Westwood pumps. She's also got printed tights as legwear.
Yeah, and it's important to note that the red coordinate is angelic pretty worn in a Gothic way. So using non-printed angelic pretty is a good way to convert into Gothic if you don't want to dive in fully.
Yeah, you can totally make a lot of things Gothic if you just like put a corset on it and wear black lipstick and wear chunky shoes and just look frowny.
How you put it all together.
Exactly. It's not about what you use usually. So these are some more coordinates that were submitted. So we've got Artemis Argy. She's wearing an overskirt, a jacket, and a jabot layered over her underdress. And she's also got that white cat bat headdress. And she's also wearing pointed toed shoes and a Biotage socks. Again, you're seeing that these are super popular and everyone kind of likes these because they go well with everything. We've also got Noir House. They are wearing several layered skirts with a jacket over top, and they've got a rosary as a belt, which I thought was a nice touch. That is also kind of a later trend, and some sheer fabric in that overskirt as well.
Noir House is in here too.
Hello.
That's great. Hi.
And then Butt Cape, the legend. We've got a PVC vest worn over an overdress, which is worn over a Sweet Lolita dress. We've got Holy Lantern OP in white and printed mate socks. Again, we're seeing lots of printed socks. And we've got Mysterious Condiments at the end here with a sheer blouse. And she's wearing the older Alice and the Pirates Gathered chiffon colorway. But this dress kind of gives the appearance of layers. It looks like she's wearing a corset and overskirt over top of a chiffon dress. And she's got the almond pointed toed shoes as well.
All right, so this is the point where we sort of speculate. 2020 is almost done, but we can talk about the future, actually. So does anyone have any thoughts or feelings about what Lolita will look like in the future?
We are reading your comments. So.
Yeah, we're also reading your comments as we're doing this. So, but yeah, panelists.
Us.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
Us. Okay.
Yeah. So, what are your predictions for 2020 and beyond?
I think definitely, like, because trends tend to be cyclical, like everyone's going back to kind of like the really chunky shoes and just like that kind of old school look. I think it's becoming more and more popular. I think also, hopefully, cross my fingers, maybe Moitié will expand their size range because their size range is quite limited. So, that would be great for some of us bustier, curvier people.
Agreed.
But a lot of brands, I see them going in that direction in general of being more size inclusive. So it's really great.
We got someone here saying, we got Phantasmagorical saying petticoats and shoes fall out of fashion because everyone's just on Zoom. And it is confirmed. I'm not wearing... I am wearing a petticoat, but no socks or shoes, of course.
Yeah, no shoes. Well, you're wearing slippers, furry slippers, so that does count. It is footwear.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of here for comfy Lita. Like,
yeah.
I know casual Lolita sort of fell out of style for a bit. But given that a lot of people are spending time at home and they still want to make use of their coordinate items, that oh my god, Mel.
Oh my god.
Sorry, I just saw Mel's comment in the Twitch chat.
Oh my god.
Cursed commentary. But yeah, people are trying to like make their Lolita coordinate or their Lolita.
Their what?
Their Lolita outfits work for everyday Zoom meetings at home. So I'm looking forward to Comfy K. I'm here for it. Comfy Goth needs to be a thing.
It's a shame that like Peace Now and Putumayo are kind of gone because they made consistently comfy, stretchy things.
Yeah. F's in the chat.
F's in the chat, boys.
That's definitely going to be more acceptance for older Lolita since none of us leaving anytime soon. Yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah, I'm not going nowhere.
Yeah. I'm here for the grandma Litas. Like, okay, there's too many F's in the chat. Oh my god.
Let's bring it back.
We all miss Putumayo.
We miss them. Marble, I agree.
Yes.
Marble has always been operating since 1990. I think they're older than Moite. I think they've actually celebrated their 25th anniversary recently. And so you can't really tell how stuff fits or how it even looks like on a human. You just have to take a chance and buy it because you have no idea what their fit is because they just sort of throw it on a mannequin without ironing it. And
everything's a lucky pack with Marble.
Everything's a lucky.
You don't know.
Oh my god.
And then we've got one from Deez Macabre. I definitely see old school reemerging. Yeah, like I think old school is here to stay for at least for Gothic. I'm not sure if like the old school suite is gonna stick around because like I'm seeing some like a bit of like kind of backlash towards old school Lolitas now for some reason. It's like, oh, why are you driving up the prices? Oh, why are you coordinating it wrong? Because it doesn't fit in with modern standards of sweet Lolita. But I think old school's here to stay. It's where we came from, so we should all appreciate it. I love old school sweet, so hopefully we stick with old school Gothic for a bit.
Yeah, simplicity is king, you know, like a simple, nice, polished outfit is better than if you're unsure about something that has a lot of components to it and you're not very experienced, like go simple. Like sometimes less is more, you know. Iridescent and multi-tone materials.
I would love to see that. Cool. Like those Atelier Pro had a few dresses a while ago where they had like this iridescent shantung that would change color in the light. So if it flashed blue or it flashed red and the silver, that would be really nice to see.
What's it called? Two-tone taffeta?
Yeah. That's so good. Why don't we use it more? Bring back some weird colors.
I'd like that. I'd wear it. Brand roomwear.
Yeah. Seriously. I want to be comfy. I need sharing.
Yeah. Okay with that. As long as it's not sweatpants designed by Novala.
Oh my god! With the lace around the knees on the Adidas looking track pants, like it had the 3 stripes for Adidas, and then the eyelet lace. They were a little cursed. Blurst Novala sweatsuits.
It didn't look like anything.
I don't think it was supposed to. I think it's just he just does his own thing.
I think he was just trolling everyone there.
Maybe he's like, they follow me so closely that they'll just wear whatever I say. And then he puts out this weird stuff and people are like, yes, I need that.
Do it. I'm looking forward to Lilith and Adalia's new stuff.
Oh yes, Deez Macabre is the designer of Lilith and Adalia, which is a Gothic Lolita brand. She does amazing bespoke Gothic Lolita dresses, so you can check her out. We can have her post her link in the Twitch chat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. People got really mad at my Adidas tracksuit cord because they thought I was ruining my moitié dress. It was simply hockey tape. Me being Eastern European / Slavic, it really just felt like it was the right thing to do. And I did post it on Closet or Frills on April Fool's Day, so it wasn't to be like confused with anything else. But it was fun. Western sizes. Yeah. That's a constant need, I think.
I think brands are finally starting to listen. And I think part of it is not only because their overseas fans want it, but like the Japanese fans are starting to get older. They no longer have 18-inch waists because we're reaching auntie territory with some of us Lolitas. Like I'm almost 29, which is not auntie status yet. But as people start getting towards their mid-40s and their 50s, like they're not going to want to wear like unsheared like bustier with boning. They want shearing because they want to eat.
Physical Drop and Atelier Puro have got it right though. Yeah. They're great. They've been blooming. I think people need to stand them a bit more. I'm sure they do, but like I know goths already do, but like classics need to look at them too. Substyles, we're seeing more releases.
Pray for that Iron Gate re-release.
They've told us many times that it'll never happen.
I know, but Can't it be like the dragon dress from Juliette Justine?
Where they send one in?
Yeah, like a lot of people have one. We'll just send it. Just take it. Just take my money. I'm offering you my tiny wallet. Just take it.
Even if it was Royal Gate.
I would take Royal Gate.
I'll take Royal Gate.
Yeah.
WA Gothic. Thoughts on WA Gothic?
Mid-2000s Visual Kei, yes.
Flashbacks.
Yes.
But since cringe is dead, it's like, go for it.
True.
Yes.
Yes, they do. They have a plus size section. Yeah,
They're
so like,
accidentally plus size too. Like they didn't think
they
didn't
do.
think they would be.
Yeah, if you Atelier Pierrot, I definitely recommend. I have a lot of their blouses because they're like all full shearing and they're super comfortable and they're really, really, really like pretty.
My metric for a good blouse is like, can I eat a meal in this without suffering? And if I can, then I'm probably not going to buy it because like I just want to be comfy.
Also, they ship internationally. You don't need a shopping service.
True. They'll mark your package down. Enjoy your postal fraud.
They give you a cursed clown postcard in there. They
have so many.
I have so many. I love them. I love that print.
The kitten clowns.
Whoever's selling the skirt on Lace Market, if you're in the chat, please put the price down. I want to buy that skirt. All right. Why don't we move on to the next thing? Because we also have another section for discussion. So we got some good beyond predictions for Lolita. So here are some tips and tricks.
Yeah. So if you are new to trying out Gothic Lolita or you're curious about it, here's like some really simple like tips and tricks that you can kind of utilize for creating your first coordinate. One of the things that we've mentioned a lot of times before is that, there's a lot of minimalism actually with Gothic coordinates. I think people think that, it needs to be over the top and all these other things, but sometimes just like less is more. Like you can go a really long way with a more simple silhouette, which is I think why old school is coming back as well. One of the things too is like having shoes with like a slight heel or a platform shoe. No black tea parties. That is also not Gothic. No. Tea parties are cute, but no, if you're trying to make a Gothic coordinate, I would definitely try to stay away from those. Even the shoes, like sometimes pick a simpler shoe. It'll go a long way. If you try to keep the outfits monochromatic, that's also a good way to go. So all black, all white. Try not to throw too many colors on because it kind of ruins the whole point. If you do, however, want to add color, if you have an all black or all white outfit, I've always seen people add those jewel tones to kind of give you a pop of color. So whether it's like a red, a blue, you can also have like a silver or gold throughout your outfit, and it'll really help kind of bring color to it and bring attention to it. Solid color dresses. If you're, adventurous, you can try a black and white cord, but I feel like even that takes it's a little bit advanced than just wearing a bunch of like a blouse and a dress that's all the same color. But the thing that can make it really, really interesting is the different textures. So really look at like all the materials that you're using for your outfit, even like that shiglet corset, right? The reason why it's so interesting is because it has like, there's a solid fabric and then there's the way that it's cut and then there's also the sheer fabric. So all those things kind of bring points of interest to your outfit that you should focus on something more like that than, whether, trying to mix and match colors, in my opinion. And then you always want to add like some kind of like statement accessory, like, a necklace, a ring, a bag, a belt, just something that really, really makes your coordinate stand out, in addition to all the really cool textures and silhouettes that you're going to be making. Also, the silhouettes, like the shape that your outfit is making, is also something that you should really pay attention to and is really important. Like when we're talking about longer length, skirts and dresses, things like that. You really got to consider like all these things. I know that like, it's just like everyone thinks, oh, you just put black on, but it's really, really like an intricate, really beautiful style. And you have to kind of have that attention to detail to really, really make your outfit successful. So yeah.
All right, here's some just current brand list in Gothic Lolita specifically. Some of them don't operate, but they're easy to find secondhand. So I'm not going to go over this too much. We'll probably post this on our social media later. But if you want to take like a screenshot, that's cool. So we've cut it down to Japanese brands, Korean, Chinese brands. And these are just like the popular ones. This isn't necessarily the whole list, okay? But these are just the popular ones that Gothics may take many pieces from. And here are some international brands and favorite accessories. Of course, it's like I said, it's not a definitive list, but it's a great place to start if you're trying out Gothic Lolita for the first time. Do you guys have any favorites with accessories? Like, do you have a place that you really love buying from?
I don't know how to say it, but Nyan's glass? Is it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I love. Oh my god.
Love you.
Best, like one of the I think best like indie accessory brands this year. Period. Like especially with Gothic, like everybody go home. Like that was like I love all the designs and the releases they've made.
Again, just simplicity is king. You know, it doesn't have to be over the top. We have some oldies here. Alchemy England, I think we're in the old brand pages for GLB at some point.
You sure were.
Komachi 2266531 Dark Lolita is a company.
And it's all plus size tights.
It's plus size tights.
If you're really petite, just from experience, their tights will not fit super well. They do have an M size for more petite people, but they focus on making accessible Gothic tights for people who are taller and people who are a little bit bigger. So if you are plus sized and you're having trouble finding good goth appropriate leg wear, that's not just like plain over the knee socks, plain lace tights. Like they actually have Gothic printed socks that actually are designed to stretch and look proper on bigger legs. So I would strongly recommend them. The M size is also very thin, so they'll rip quite easily, whereas the plus size is made of a more thicker, durable material. So those, they're just don't bother if you're skinny, but if you're plus size, go for it. They're amazing.
Someone mentioned Blood Milk, which
Blood Milk's great.
Blood Milk is an amazing brand. It's a bit of a pricey brand, but all of the materials are like real silver, real precious metals. So if you ever do invest in a Blood Milk piece, it's something that's probably gonna last you like the rest of your life if you take care of it. So yeah.
It's more on the mature side of Gothic too, so it's good to be wearing some of that old school Gothic with it. It looks great together.
So good. So out of my price range.
I know. It's like it's like fine jewelry.
Like it's real jewelry. It's not like play jewelry. I mean, a lot of brands really release like it's plastic, it's like alloy, it's not real.
That's okay.
Which is fine, but it's not gonna last forever. Whereas Blood Milk, it's like that's
a good alternative to Blood Milk if you don't like their price point. Pewter jewelry has sort of the same look. So I believe we put in, did we do it? Was Martha Rotten. I don't think we put it. It is. It is in there. Okay, yeah. So Martha Rotten has similar like Gothic appropriate things. So if you want a lower price point, it's pewter. Same with Alchemy England as well. They're pewter as well.
There's also Arcana 13, which I don't think is on this list. They're Quebecois. They're one of us. I know. Well, Canadian.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Oh no, we're gonna get nationalist in this chat. So they sell kind of, it's definitely more like Western Goth oriented. Like you'll see lots of pentagrams and kind of like Wiccan or satanic jewelry, but that is some people's vibe. Some people want a more like occult vibe with their Gothic. So they're really good for occult style jewelry. Like you can get sigils. And they still do the standard vampire-y stuff too, but it's all pewter, so it's quite affordable if you want the look of some of the bougie stuff, but you don't have the wallet. So that's like for me.
Oh, secondhand Blood Milk on Depop. All right, thanks for the tip.
That's a good idea. I didn't.
So now we're gonna fight.
Yeah.
We're all friends, right?
Westwood too. I get secondhand Vivienne Westwood jewelry. Really great.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not into crosses, you know, like pick your symbol, wear it. Yeah. There's no rules to what symbol you want to wear. It just seems like Japanese brands love crosses. So if it's printed, I'm sorry.
Oh, shout out to Porcelain Song by Serafina. Hey. So they do a lot of like rosary style jewelry with like beads and roses, crosses. It's very beautiful. It's also super affordable. There's an Etsy store for Porcelain Song, I believe.
Oh, nice.
One of the main brands featured in this event, I believe.
Yes.
Demonia shoes. I mean, need we say more? It's appropriate for a lot of Gothic looks. Not every item, of course, because they have so many things now. But you know, the Kara and the Dolly and the Charade are good shapes.
Oh, and Sprite. Like Sprite's good. It's really good because it's like a flat platform. So if you have any kind of ankle issues or you have trouble walking on high heels, it's got like a 1-inch flat platform with enough room inside the shoe for an arch insert, which is what I wore. I wore those when I stepped off a curb slightly wrong and I sprained my ankle like a day before I had to go to like a con. And I'm like, okay, well, I wore a floor length skirt to hide my totally not edgy shoes because I'm short, so I always wear like the really high heel platform shoes. And I'm like, okay, no one can see if I'm wearing these very small platforms. They're very cute, but they're just not like my aesthetic personally. But they can confirm super comfy. You can put an insole in there, so if you jack up your ankle, you're good with the Sprite.
And they're wide foot friendly too.
Yeah.
So
if you got ducky feet like me.
Spoiler alert, we're both short.
Yeah.
Yeah. So detached heels are my favorite.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. So this is just, we have a few more minutes left until the end of our panel. So any questions generally from the panel, put them in the chat. Otherwise, we can just ramble on forever, or maybe me. I don't know. I think I think we should go around the panel table and talk about some cringe first mistakes, maybe, because I always think that's fun.
All right, you first.
Oh my god. Okay. Jeez. Oh god.
There's too much cringe to count.
There's too much cringe. Yeah. So I had a lot of eBay and Jill Punk Loli type stuff in the mid 2000s, and or it was through eBay. So yeah, there were a lot of moments there. I remember figuring out Lolita, like a community for Lolita, was actually on ImView, like the chat service. So my first Lolita community was actually on this Cursed website where we make avatars. And I made like fake, like I couldn't afford Lolita at the time, or I only had a few pieces. So I actually made like some of the outfits that were in that chat service around what I saw in Street Snaps. So that was a kind of a cringe, but kind of wholesome.
It's kind of cute.
I remember my first dress was like this Rococo monstrosity. It wasn't really gothic. It was just like Hime but black. And I wore like fleur-de-lis, like lace tights. And I remember someone trying to roast me, being like, "You're not wearing knee-high socks." And I'm like, would it even match? And they're like, "No, it's just wrong." I'm like, whatever.
Wow.
I pieced out. I was like, whatever. I know what I'm doing. I know more than you. Yeah. Anyways, that was a fun.
It's a time.
It is time. Oh, no, not yet. A little bit. We have 5 more minutes, I think. But yeah, one thing I had was like when I was like 14, and I think it was like maybe the first Anime Next Con that they had in Jersey. It was like, oh, I want to go to this anime con, and I really like was super into VK, and I was like, oh my god, I want to dress like Mana, I want Lolita, but like I was a 14-year-old kid, how was I going to get Lolita?
Yeah.
So, like, my mom drove me to Hot Topic. I don't know if anyone had that like infamous, it's like this infamous like black and white like Hot Topic Lolita dress. I had that dress, and my mom put my hair in like ringlets, and she was like trying to sew me a maxi pad headdress with like the worst quality lace. Oh my god. And I was like at the con all like, oh, I'm a Lolita.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's actually really cute.
My mom got me some Lolita shoes too. She was like, oh, like she knew the brand because she was like, she's a little alternative herself, but yeah, she was like, here.
That's actually awesome. Like, it's nice that you had a parent who like supported you in your cringe, because like a lot of people are like, no.
And in the magazine, is that what you want? And I'm like, yes, mom. And she's like, okay.
I love your mom.
That's not cringe. That's wholesome. Damn it.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's so nice.
That's very cute. I like it. I'm still thinking about my cringe. It's not because
There's
I don't
so much to sift through.
Yeah, it's just like, which moment hurt more?
I was gonna say you trying to be friends with the Japanese girl in your class, but that's not Lolita related.
No, I cannot bring that up in public because people would look at me different.
No,
I would like tank my reputation.
Okay.
I don't have much of a reputation to begin with.
What about like your first meet or something like that? Like, what was like? How did your first meets go?
Oh, I was scared shitless at my first meet. Oh, I swore by accident.
Sorry, bleep it out.
Oh no,
it's live.
So at my first meet, I wasn't a kid. Like, I had been kind of wearing Lolita privately by myself, and I was scared of humans because I have severe social anxiety, if you couldn't tell by my general awkward persona. And I was like wearing, I forget what I was wearing. I was like wearing a bunch of Moche stuff because that's all I owned. And I went to this meet. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because it was 2014 and Moche wasn't cool.
Okay.
So I was like, whatever, I'm going to be the only goth there, and I'm sure people will think I'm lame. And then I went, and everyone was actually super nice. It was at this con that's called Atomic Lollipop, which is a very cursed con in Toronto that focuses on geek culture, which should already be setting off like red alarm bells in your head, because that's geek culture is a whole ass mess, and I'm speaking as a geek.
It was a rave in disguise.
Yeah, it was kind of a rave where a bunch of nerds got really drunk and cosplayed, and there was burlesque, and that's a story for another day. But I went to the meet, and I was terrified of everyone. Like, we had like one of those things, like not a Lolita 101 panel, but like a meet where everyone would go into one little room and mix and mingle, except everyone in the comm already knew each other. So I'm just like, I think I was one of like 3 newbies there. So I'm just sitting there in the corner, like shaking in terror. And then someone mentioned JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I'm like, oh my God, these are my people. Because I've been reading JoJo's Bizarre Adventure since like, I don't know, since I was like 15 at this time. I was like 24 during this meet, I think, or 25. So I was kind of grown up. It's kind of. And then we started talking about JoJo, and I was like, oh my God, Lolitas are lovelies. Like, at this point, I'd been like raised on like Get Off EGL, where people would rip each other apart over nothing. People were so mean on the internet, and I'm a big baby, so I was very spooked. And then I went in real life, and nothing happened. It was the most uneventful meetup ever. People were like, oh, your coordinates is very nice. How long have you been wearing Lolita? What's your name? Blah, blah. I was like, mousy voice, like, hi, my name is Chelsea. I like anime. That's it. Now I'm loud and obnoxious at meets, just like the rest of us. So
yeah,
that's my.
So you didn't have an Ida stage.
Oh no. Oh, I did. Trust me. I tried to do Gothic Lolita Decora at the same time in high school while also wearing a school uniform.
How the fuck did that happen?
It didn't. It was not good. I put like 20 hair clips on, but I had to wear my uniform top. And it was.
Isn't it like a polo?
Yeah, it was a knee-length red polo. That's
a knee-length.
I have photos. I'll post them on Instagram if I can find them. That's a threat.
School K.
It was really bad.
Wow.
That's my cringe. Trust me, there's deep layers to my cringe. It's just I don't talk about them because I want people to like me.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. My first meet, I think I wore my first moitié, like it was a long blouse, and I wore like a Restyle cemetery print skirt. It still sells today. It was so hot, and I thought for some reason that, you know, flower headdresses were going to be my thing, because I'm like, oh, I'm Slavic. Slavic people traditionally wear flower headdresses, so I'm going to make it my thing. So, of course, and then I had a great wig. It wasn't a great look, and I only have one photo of that meet. But I remember it was just in the basement of this French patisserie, and they let us have meets there, and lovely Laura just like walks in, and I'm like, oh my God, like I look awful, like she's taking pictures, she's so nice to me, what's going on? I was scared, but it was a fun time in the end, and I think I ended up going like every time that they had that kind of meet. Yeah. It was fun.
I miss those meets.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Better Avenue. Victim of COVID, unfortunately.
Victim of COVID.
They had the best macarons. And they let us use their Wi-Fi in the basement.
They loved us. We spent a lot of money there.
We kind of did. They better love us. Like, we went there literally every week and bought a lot of more food than necessary.
Yeah.
No one needs 8 macarons, but I did.
No, they were great. They were good.
Hey, I think we're done for time.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of info. I hope stuff, because that was a lot of info to catch up with.
Nice.
We don't really have a sign off.
We thought we would just sort of.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was really fun interacting with you. I'm trying to read the Twitch chat while talking, and it's really hard, but like I'm also trying not to laugh because y'all are funny. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please watch the other panelists, and we'll see you soon.
And fashion show coming up next.
Bye.
Bye.